The wind howled across the frozen battlefield. Snow covered everything, ruined tanks, broken armor, and shattered helmets. In the middle of it all, Lyra lay on her back. Eyes half closed, body bleeding. Her legs didn't move anymore. Her side was torn open, and she could feel the cold climbing up her spine like death itself. She wasn't just injured, she was paralyzed, and worst of all, her people had already left her behind. Her squad leader had whispered, "We'll come back," but the ship never returned. They had marked her as a lost cause, just like damaged cargo. Not worth the risk, not worth the time. A small emergency beacon blinked weakly beside her. Its red light pulsed into the white snow, hoping someone would see it, but no one from her kind responded. Not one soldier, not one medic, not one friend. She waited, hour after hour, her body shaking but unable to move. Each breath became harder. She thought maybe it would be better to just close her eyes and let go. At least it wouldn't hurt anymore. But just as her vision turned black, she heard something. Boots crunching in the snow, slow, careful steps. Her eyes opened just a little, just enough to see the figure coming toward her. It wasn't one of her kind. It was a human. He wore a heavy coat with a patch on his shoulder. His rifle was slung across his chest, but his hands were raised, showing peace. He had a scar across his cheek and tired blue eyes. He looked around and saw the blinking light, then saw her. He dropped to one knee beside her and checked her pulse. She tried to speak, but her voice cracked like ice. He didn't say anything at first. He just looked at her. Really looked. "You're not dead," he finally said, softly. Lyra tried to turn her head away, ashamed. Why was a human here? Why did he care? He took off his glove and gently touched her forehead. "You're burning up," he muttered. "And your blood's freezing." He didn't hesitate. He took off his coat and wrapped it around her. "No," she whispered. "Go. Leave. It's a trap," but the human ignored her words. "My name's Jack," he said. "And I'm not leaving you here." He looked around, checking for drones, patrols, traps. Then he slid his arms under her and lifted her up. Her body felt like dead weight, but Jack gritted his teeth and stood. "You're light," he joked. For someone with armor, she tried to struggle, but her limbs wouldn't move. "Why?" she asked. "Why help? An alien?" Jack looked at her, walking slowly through the snow, because no one else did. He said, "That's reason enough." Every step was hard. The snow was deep, the wind brutal, and the weight heavy. But Jack didn't stop. They passed the bodies of other soldiers, both human and alien, ghosts of the war that left this place cold and broken. Lyra closed her eyes again. She didn't want to see. She didn't want to feel this strange kindness. They found shelter inside the remains of a transport pod. Jack used a plasma torch to warm the metal and block the wind. He laid her down gently and wrapped her in another thermal blanket. She stared at him, confused. "Your kind hates us," she whispered. Jack sat down beside her, rubbing warmth into her frozen fingers. "Some do," he said, "but not all of us." She studied his face, the scar, the tired eyes, the way he shivered but kept warming her hands first. She had never seen such a thing before, not even among her own kind. "I can't feel my legs," she said, her voice breaking. "I know," Jack replied, "but you can still feel hope." She blinked, surprised by his words. Was that what she was feeling? Outside, the wind screamed louder. Inside the broken pod, a small fire flickered. And in that quiet moment, something changed between them. Not love. Not yet, but something far deeper than orders or war. Jack checked his scanner. No rescue teams. Nearby, only enemy patrols and cold. Still, he smiled at her. "We'll figure it out," he said. Lyra, once a proud warrior, now left to die, didn't know what to say. So she said nothing, just stared at him, her heart heavy with questions and the smallest spark of warmth. This was not how her story was supposed to end, and maybe, just maybe, this human was the reason it wouldn't. Lyra woke up to the sound of metal creaking. She blinked slowly, her body still in pain, her legs still frozen like stone. The air was cold. But there was warmth near her chest. Jack's coat still wrapped around her tightly. A small fire crackled in the corner of the broken pod, casting orange light on the walls. Jack sat by the fire, sharpening a piece of metal into a crude blade. His eyes were focused, but tired. He hadn't slept, he hadn't left. She stared at him, confused. Why was he still here? He had every reason to leave Herge like her own kind did, but instead, he stayed. Jack looked up and smiled. Hey, you're awake. Lyra tried to move her legs, but they didn't respond. A wave of frustration hit her. She hated this feeling. Being weak, being helpless. I still can't walk, she said quietly. I know, Jack replied, but you're alive. And that's what matters. She looked away, ashamed. You don't understand, she whispered. My people believe broken ones are useless. Jack stood up and walked over to her. You're not useless, he said firmly. You're just hurt, and hurt people can heal. He gently lifted her again, careful not to hurt her more. Outside, the snow had settled a bit, but the wind was still biting. Jack secured her to his back, using straps he made from old armor belts. Her arms hung over his shoulders, and her cheek rested near his neck. She could feel his heart beat steady and strong. They began moving, one slow step at a time, every few meters. Jack stopped to scan the area, his eyes sharp, always alert. They weren't safe, not yet. The enemy still patrolled the outer zone, and drones watched from above. Lyra whispered, You'll get killed helping me. Jack just chuckled. Maybe, he said, but dying while saving someone. That's not a bad way to go, she didn't reply. But her grip around his shoulder tightened slightly as they crossed a ridge. A strange sound filled the air. Buzzing, mechanical, and low-end enemy drone. Jack ducked behind a boulder and held his breath. Lyra could see the blinking red light of the drone passing overhead. Her heart raced. If they were found, they would both be dead. She closed her eyes and waited. The drone moved on. Unaware, Jack exhaled. That was close. He adjusted his grip on her and continued walking. His boots sank deep into the snow. Each step got harder. But he didn't stop. Hours passed. They found a small cave formed in the side of a rocky cliff. It was dry and out of view, safe, at least for the night. Jack laid her down gently on a pile of soft cloth he had taken from the wreckage. He built another small fire and melted snow into water. He offered her a small protein bar, dry but still edible. She took it with weak hands and ate slowly. Why are you doing this? She asked again, voice shaking. Jack looked at her and didn't speak for a moment. Then he said, A long time ago, I was left behind too. Lyra stared at him, surprised. My own unit thought I died in a blast. He continued, They left. But someone came back for me. Who? She asked. My sister, he said, with a small smile. She was just a medic, but she carried me 5 miles on her back. She paused, poking the fire. I lived because she didn't give up on me. Now, it's my turn to do the same. Lyra's eyes filled with tears. She didn't want to cry. Not in front of him. Not while she looked so weak. But the warmth in his words melted something inside her. For the first time, she didn't feel like a burden, she felt. Seen that night, the storm grew stronger outside. But inside the cave, the fire burned bright. They sat close, not speaking much, just listening to the wind and each other's breathing. Lyra watched Jack clean a wound on his hand. You're bleeding, she said. Jack shrugged. Just a scratch. She wanted to help, but couldn't even lift herself. Her fingers curled into fists. "I hate being useless," she whispered again. "You're not," Jack said without looking up. "You're surviving." And that's the bravest thing anyone can do right now. Silence settled between them. A peaceful silence, one born from trust, slowly growing in the distance. Lights blinked enemy outposts, scanning the snowy plains. They were getting closer. Tomorrow, Jack would need to move again and carry her farther. But tonight, in this tiny, frozen shelter, they had one thing: hope. And sometimes, hope is all you need to change everything. The sun rose slowly over the white battlefield. Its weak light bounced off the frozen ground like silver fire. Lyra opened her eyes in the cave, her body aching, her breath fogging the air. Jack was already awake, preparing for the next part of their journey. He moved quietly, checking his scanner and wrapping supplies into a cloth bag. The map on his wrist showed a dangerous path of frozen river they would have to cross. Above that river was a long, thin bridge made of ice and old metal supports. If they crossed it, they could reach the edge of human-controlled territory. Jack looked at Lyra, still lying on the soft cloth bed. "You ready?" he asked gently. She nodded, yes, though her body said no. He lifted her again, just like before, and tied her onto his back. But today, she felt heavier, not because of weight, but because of worry. She had heard him coughing in the night, and his limp was worse now. Still, he kept smiling like pain didn't matter. They left the cave and stepped into the icy wind. The snow had hardened overnight, making the walk a little easier. But the cold cut like a knife. Lyra buried her face against Jack's neck, trying to keep them both warm. After walking for hours, they reached the river, and there it was, the ice bridge, stretched across the wide canyon, thin and cracked. Old wires and frozen metal beams held it together like a dying thread. One wrong step, and it would collapse into the freezing water far below. Jack took a deep breath. "No turning back," he whispered. "Are you sure?" Lyra asked, her voice shaking. Jack nodded. "We don't have another choice." He stepped onto the bridge, slowly, one boot after the other. The ice groaned under their weight. Each step echoed like a warning. Lyra held her breath, her arms tightening around Jack's shoulders. They reached the middle of the bridge. Suddenly, a loud crack echoed through the canyon. The bridge shuddered, then the ice beneath Jack's foot broke completely. Jack slipped, and the world tilted. The bridge snapped in half, sending both of them falling into the air. Lyra screamed, the sound lost in the wind. Jack wrapped his arms tightly around her as they crashed into the side of the canyon. By some miracle, they didn't fall into the river. Instead, they landed hard on a narrow ice ledge halfway down the canyon wall. Jack hit the ground first, shielding Lyra with his body. Everything went silent for a moment. Then came pain. Jack groaned, rolling over. His leg was twisted, badly broken. Blood ran down his face, but his eyes were open. "Lyra," he whispered, "are you all right?" She nodded weakly. "Yes, you." Jack forced a smile. "I've had worse," but he couldn't stand, and Lyra still couldn't move her legs. Now they were both stuck, trapped on a ledge with no help coming. Lyra felt panic rising in her chest. "This is it," she said. "We're going to die here." Jack shook his head. "Not yet," with great effort. He pulled off his belt and used metal rods from his broken pack to build a splint for his leg. Then he looked around and found 2 long sticks, dead branches frozen solid. He tied them together with wire and made a crude sled. "You're going to pull both of us?" Lyra asked, shocked. Jack shook his head. "No," he said, "you're going to pull us." She stared at him, confused. "I can't move my legs." She said, "You still have your arms." He replied, "We'll go slow, but we'll go." With his help, she slid onto the sled. Jack tied himself to the back and handed her the sticks like makeshift crutches. "Just push forward," he said. "I'll guide you." The journey up the icy slope was painful and slow. Lyra used every bit of strength in her arms to drag herself forward. Inch by inch, Jack used his good leg to help guide the sled behind her. Together, they crawled their way up through snow and sharp rocks. Each time Lyra wanted to stop, Jack whispered, "Just a little more." Each time Jack gasped in pain. Lyra whispered, "I'm not leaving you." They worked as two broken people who refused to give up. The sun began to fall, casting long shadows over the canyon, and finally, they reached the top. Lyra collapsed in the snow, breathing hard. Jack dragged himself next to her and lay on his back. For a moment, they just stared at the sky, silent, tired, and alive. Then, far off in the sky, they saw something, a small light blinking through the clouds. It wasn't a star, it was a drone enemy tech, scanning the land. Lyra's heart raced. "They've seen us." Jack looked up and smiled. "Let them," he said. "Let them see we're still alive." Cold wind rushed across the canyon top as Jack and Lyra lay on the snowy ground. Above them, the enemy drone hovered silently, its red light blinking like a curse. Lyra felt her stomach twist. If the drone had seen them, the enemy would know she was alive, and worse, they would know a human was helping her. Jack sat up slowly. Wincing from the pain in his broken leg, he stared up at the sky, not afraid, but calm. "Looks like we've got company soon," he muttered. Lyra's voice trembled. "They'll come for us now." Jack nodded. "Yeah," he said. "But let's not be here when they do." He helped Lyra back onto the sled and tied his broken leg tightly with cloth. Then, using one arm and a stick, he began pulling the sled forward through the snow. Lyra tried to help, pushing with her hands and guiding their path. They were both exhausted, but they didn't stop, not far ahead. Jack spotted a half-buried structure poking out from the snow. He squinted. "That's an old human research bunker," he said. "If it still works, we might have a chance." They reached the bunker by nightfall. Its doors were frozen shut, covered in ice and rust. Jack pulled out a plasma cutter from his bag and carefully burned through the locks. The doors creaked open with a deep metallic groan. Inside, the air was dry and dark. Flickering emergency lights lined the hallways. Old computers sat in dust, and crates of supplies lay stacked against the walls. Jack found a working power node and connected it to the main panel. The lights buzzed, then slowly came back to life. Warm air flowed in through old vents. And for the first time in days, Lyra felt heat on her skin. They made a bed out of blankets and foam, and Jack gently laid her down. Then he began exploring the rooms, gathering supplies, food packets, water bottles, and bandages. Lyra watched him move, limping but focused, even with one leg, even half frozen. He was still protecting her. She blinked away tears and looked around the bunker. On one of the walls, there were faded photos of human families' smiling faces, children, pets. She stared at them, confused. Why do humans keep photos like this? She asked when Jack returned. Jack smiled softly. "Because we remember who we fight for." He sat beside her and handed her a warm drink packet. Lyra took it with shaky hands. "My people don't do this," she whispered. "We don't show love like this." "You should," Jack replied. "It keeps you alive." Suddenly, a loud beeping came from one of the control panels. Jack rushed over and checked the monitor. "Damn," he said. "Encrypted signal enemy forces nearby." Lyra's eyes widened. "They're coming." "Yeah," Jack replied. "Fast." He activated the bunker's defenses, auto turrets, and motion alarms. Then he pulled down a hidden weapons rack and handed Lyra a plasma pistol. Her fingers shook. "I haven't fired a weapon since I was hurt," she said. Jack met her eyes. "You don't have to be perfect, just brave. Outside, snow crunched under heavy boots. Shadows moved in the blizzard. Enemy soldiers, fast and armed. The turrets activated, firing bursts into the night. But there were too many of them, and some made it to the entrance. The door burst open with a loud blast. Jack fired first, taking down one, then two. He limped back to cover, yelling, "Stay down, Lyra." But she didn't. Lyra held the pistol in both hands, her arms weak but steady. She aimed and fired, missing the first time, then hitting the next. One soldier fell, then another. The old fear inside her burned away, replaced by something fierce. They fought side by side, human and alien, wounded but unbroken when the last attacker dropped. Silence filled the bunker again. Jack collapsed beside her. Bleeding but alive, Lyra dropped the pistol, her breath shaking. "I did it," she whispered. "I actually fought." Jack smiled weakly. "Told you you could." Far above, the drone that had spotted them earlier sent its final message. In a hidden command base, enemy officers watched the footage of the battle. "She's alive," one said, "and she's fighting with a human." Another officer frowned. "This will spread quickly." Her people declared her dead. The commander growled. "Now she's an embarrassment. They'll want her." "Back?" someone whispered. "Maybe," the commander said. "Or maybe they'll want to silence her for good." Back in the bunker, Jack and Lyra patched up their wounds. They didn't speak much, but something new filled the air. A quiet strength, a growing trust, a bond that was no longer just survival. They weren't just trying to stay alive anymore. They were trying to win. The bunker was silent. Smoke from the last fight still hung in the air. Broken weapons and frozen enemy bodies lay near the entrance. But inside, Jack and Lyra stayed alive. Barely. Jack leaned against the wall, clutching his bleeding side. Lyra sat beside him, holding a half-melted ice pack to his wound. "I need you to stay awake," she said softly. Jack smiled weakly. "You're starting to sound like a soldier." Lyra's hands trembled, not from fear, but from exhaustion. She had really fought for the first time since her injury. The fear of being useless was still there, but now it had to fight. With something stronger, hope. Suddenly, a red light blinked on the control panel. Jack turned his head slowly, eyes narrowing. "More are coming," he said. "A bigger squad this time." Lyra moved toward the screen. 3 vehicles, armored and fast, were closing in from the east. She bit her lip. "We can't fight that many." "No," Jack said, "but we can delay them." He struggled to his feet. Using a metal rod as a crutch, Lyra followed, dragging herself into the bunker's weapon room. There were mines, old explosives, and one working turret they hadn't used yet. Jack pointed to the entrance tunnel. "We'll rig this," he said. "Make them walk through a trap." Lyra nodded and helped him set the mines. Her hands remembered the motions. Like muscle memory buried deep, they placed the turret above the entrance and rewired the walls to collapse if triggered. It wasn't perfect, but it was something. Then they returned to the control room and waited. Minutes passed like hours. Then they heard the engines. The ground shook and lights flashed outside. The first enemy soldier stepped into the tunnel. Boom! The mines exploded, taking out the front line. The turret came alive, firing a stream of plasma at the others. But the enemies were smart. They threw grenades, shot smoke, and pushed forward through the chaos. Jack fired from behind cover, picking them off one by one. His breathing was ragged. But he didn't stop. Lyra tried to reload his weapon. Her hands slipped. But she kept going. Suddenly, a grenade rolled near them. Jack dove, grabbing it, and threw it back. The blast shook the walls, knocking both of them off their feet. Smoke filled the room, and coughing echoed through the bunker. Then came footsteps, slow and steady, an enemy soldier. taller and armored, stepped in holding a charged rifle. Lyra froze, her weapon empty. Jack was down, barely conscious. The soldier raised his gun at her chest. For a second, she saw her end. But then something clicked in her mind. Not today. Not. Like this, she grabbed a metal pipe and swung it hard into the soldier's head. Once, twice, then again, he dropped. Stunned, she crawled over and grabbed his gun, firing 3 shots into his armor. Silence returned again. Jack groaned. "You? All right?" Lyra nodded, shaking. "I think so." She crawled to him, pulling his arm over her shoulder. Together, they moved deeper into the bunker, sealing doors behind them. They reached the back room, where an emergency escape tunnel led into the hills. But Jack collapsed, his body giving out. "I can't go farther," he whispered. Lyra looked at him, her hands tight around his shirt. "You carried me when I was broken," she said. "Now I carry you." She pulled him onto the sled, using all her strength to move toward the escape tunnel. Her arms ached, her body screamed, but she didn't stop. Outside, the wind howled again, and snow began to fall. Behind them, the bunker doors burst open, enemy voices shouting in the distance. Lyra looked ahead, the tunnel barely visible. Through the snow. "We're not done yet," she said through clenched teeth. Step by step, drag by drag. She pulled the sled forward. Her body was weak, but her heart was stronger than ever. Above, another drone hovered silently. It recorded every second. Alien girl dragging a human soldier through the storm, back at the enemy base. Commanders watched in shock. She's alive. And protecting him. After all that, she still fights. One of them whispered, "She's not just a soldier. She's a symbol now." And far away, on her homeworld, her people began to talk. Whispers turned into questions. Why did she fight for a human? Why did a human fight for her? Lyra didn't know that the galaxy was watching. She didn't care. She just wanted Jack to live. The sky above the snowy hills turned a pale gray. Lyra dragged the sled forward, one slow pull at a time. Jack lay, unconscious, his face pale, his body shaking from blood loss and cold. Her arms burned, her fingers were numb, but she didn't stop. Behind them, the bunker burned, sending black smoke into the sky. Enemy troops were searching the area. But they hadn't found the escape tunnel yet. Lyra kept moving, even when her knees scraped the ice. Even when the wind screamed so loud she couldn't hear her own breath. Hours passed, maybe more. Then she saw it a small human outpost built. Into the cliffs, a rescue flare had been fired from its tower, and lights blinked along its walls. Lyra collapsed at the gate, holding Jack tightly. "Help him," she whispered before everything went dark. When she opened her eyes again, she was lying on a real bed. The room was warm, clean, and lit by soft yellow lights. Medical machines beeped quietly. And Jack rested beside her in another bed. She sat up quickly, ignoring her pain. Jack's chest rose and fell. Slowly, he was alive. Tears welled in her eyes, but she wiped them away. The door opened, and a human officer walked in. He saluted her, then said, "You saved one of our best men." Lyra looked at him, unsure what to say. Before she could respond, a second voice echoed from a screen behind him. "Lyra, of Clan Cirith," it said. Cold and formal, she turned to the screen and saw a high-ranking elder from her homeworld. Her heart sank. "You are alive," the elder said. This was unexpected. Lyra stared at the screen. "You left me to die. We assumed you were beyond saving." The elder replied, "We had to preserve resources." Jack groaned lightly in the bed, trying to sit up. Lyra moved quickly and helped him rest. Back down, the elder continued. "You have created a problem, Lyra. The galaxy has seen the recordings, seen your alliance." Lyra's hands clenched. "You mean they saw the truth?" The elder ignored her tone. You will be welcomed back into the clan, he said, but only if you agree to undergo memory cleansing. Jack blinked, barely awake. What's that's supposed to mean? Lyra whispered. They want to erase you. Jack's face tightened. The elder continued. The union between alien and human is dangerous. Your actions may cause political unrest. You must return and be cleansed. Or be declared a traitor. Lyra's heart pounded in her chest. Go back and lose everything, or stay and be hunted by her own people. The human officer stepped forward. She has a choice, he said firmly. She saved a human life, and we don't erase our heroes. The elder's expression darkened. Your heroism ends with dishonor if you refuse, he warned. Think carefully, Lyra. The screen turned off, leaving silence in the room. Jack looked at her weakly. It's your choice, he said. But I'd never ask you to stay for me. Lyra looked at him, then down at her hands. Once they had been proud warrior hands, cold and deadly. Now they trembled, but they also held warmth. She turned to the officer. If I stay, I'll be hunted. He nodded. Yes, but you won't be alone that night. Lyra sat beside Jack's bed, thinking. She watched him sleep. His body finally healing after days of pain. She remembered the moment he first lifted her, when she had been broken and abandoned. No one had believed in her, not even herself, but he had. Her people might erase the truth, but she would not. In the morning, she stood in front of the base's communication tower. The human officer gave her permission to speak across open channels. She looked into the camera, her face scarred, her voice steady. My name is Lyra of Clan Cirith, she said. I was left behind by my own. But I was saved by a human. He carried me when I couldn't walk. He fought for me when I had no strength. I will not return to those who abandon the weak, she continued. I will stand with those who protect. No matter their species, her message spread fast across star systems. Some praised her, others called her a traitor, but no one could ignore her. On her homeworld, the elder watched with fury. She chose disgrace, he said coldly, but others? In the room whispered, maybe she chose courage. Lyra returned to Jack's side. He opened his eyes and saw her smile. You're still here, he whispered. I'll always be, she said. You didn't give up on me. And I won't give up on you, together. They stared out the window at the snow-covered hills. The future was still dangerous, still uncertain. But they would face it side by side. Snow fell softly outside the human outpost. It had been 2 weeks since Lyra sent her message to the galaxy. She became a symbol of survival, of courage, of something new. But not everyone saw her as a hero. Some called her a traitor. Others called her a miracle. But Lyra didn't care about what the galaxy said. She only cared about one thing: healing. Inside the recovery room, Jack sat in a chair, wrapped in bandages. His wounds were healing, but he still walked with a limp. He watched Lyra from across the room as she gritted her teeth and pressed down on her arms. Her body was weak, her legs still heavy, but she had a goal now. A human nurse stood beside her, guiding her movements. Just try again, she said softly. Shift your weight slowly. Lyra nodded. Sweat dripping from her forehead, her hands shook as she pushed down on the walker. Her legs trembled, then locked into place, and then she rose, for the first time since the battle that broke her. Lyra stood on her own 2 feet, wobbly, shaking but standing. She looked at Jack, her eyes wide with emotion. He smiled, pride shining on his tired face. You did it, he said, voice cracking. Lyra nodded slowly, tears filling her eyes. I couldn't have done it without you. Jack leaned forward, resting his elbow on the table. You carried me through snow and death, he said. Now you've carried yourself, too. That night, the outpost received a transmission. It came from a neutral space station 1, where humans and aliens had begun holding peace talks. The message was clear. Lyra and Jack are invited to speak at the council. The officer of the base handed them the invitation. You two have started something bigger than either of you know, he said. People are talking about unity. About second chances. Lyra looked at Jack, and he nodded. They would go together. The journey to the council was long. They flew through silent stars, past damaged war zones, and into neutral space, everywhere they went. People stared, some with admiration, some with doubt, but no one turned away. When they arrived at the council chamber, the room fell silent. Dozens of alien leaders and human representatives filled the hall. News drones hovered in the air, ready to broadcast every word. Lyra stood tall. Wearing a simple robe and a brace on her leg, Jack stood beside her in his worn combat uniform. The speaker asked Lyra to address the room. She stepped forward, her voice calm but strong. My people gave up on me, she began. They said I was broken, not worth saving. But a human carried me when I could not walk. He didn't ask for a reward. She continued. He didn't see me as the enemy. He just saw someone who needed help. She looked around the room. Meeting the eyes of leaders from both sides, we cannot build a peaceful galaxy if we only value the strong, she said. We must protect those who fall. We must carry each other. Jack stepped forward too. I didn't save Lyra because she was alien, he said. I saved her because she was human where it mattered in her heart. There was silence, then slow clapping, then more, and then the whole room stood. The vote for continued peace talks passed. A new program was started, human and alien rescue teams working side by side, named Project Second Life. The symbol was simple, 2 hands holding each other in snow. Back on Earth, a statue of Lyra and Jack was placed in the Capitol Memorial Garden, not because they were perfect, but because they didn't give up. One night, months later, Lyra and Jack stood on a quiet hill. Watching stars above them, Lyra's legs were stronger now, her hands steady. Jack had a cane, but his spirit burned brighter than ever. Do you regret saving me? Lyra asked softly. Jack looked at her with a smirk. Not even for a second, he replied. And you? Lyra turned to him, her voice gentle. I thought I was dead the day I met you. She said, but you gave me more than life, you gave me purpose. They stood side by side, 2 warriors who had survived war. Pain and betrayal, not because they were the strongest, but because they had each other in a cold galaxy filled with broken promises. Their story burned like fire. A reminder that no one is truly alone as long as one person dares to stay.